Okay, moving on to the next segment of today's show. We actually had some legitimately big news in the world of college basketball over the weekend, and it was announced that the point guard of Texas Tech, Davide Moretti, will be going pro and will not return to Chris Beard and the Red Raiders going into next season. And I think there are a lot of interesting things and a lot of interesting storylines we could talk about from this decision by Davide Moretti. Number one, I'm not at all saying he made the wrong decision. As a matter of fact, I'm really not surprised by this decision, as it was rumored toward the back end of last season that he was always considering skipping his senior year, going to play professional and going right to his home country of Italy. And that's the first thing. Like, this dude is from Italy. I understand overseas a lot. There are a lot of question marks right now around it when it comes to possible NBA draft decisions. But with Moretti, once again, this isn't really that big of a surprise because he's from Italy. His father, I believe, played and was a coach in Italy. So, Moretti leaving isn't a shock. But from a pure basketball perspective, I was very high on Texas Tech going into this season. And even though there were a lot of rumors about Moretti possibly leaving, and I get it, I did always hold out some possible hope of the slight chance that he would come back just because it was his senior year. And from, once again, a pure basketball perspective, I really like Chris Beard and the way he built this roster. Now, they're going to have to find a starting point guard, and until then, I'm not really sure how high I could have Texas Tech in my top 25 now. As you guys remember, last week I updated my college basketball top 25, and I had Texas Tech very high at number 5 in all of college basketball. And Moretti was a big reason why. And he's very good, but I just think he was such an integral piece to this team because he was really their only true point guard. And when you have a team full of like 6'6" to 6'8" wings that are like just lengthy and athletic, and Texas Tech has a bunch of depth and they have a bunch of size, and that's what I really like about this team. But the only problem is this team is really going to have to find a point guard, maybe in the grad transfer market badly, because from a pure basketball perspective, right, a lot of people will say and talk about Jalen Green, guys like that, and how him leaving early, or not even leaving early, but him not even going to play college basketball at all, right? A lot of people are going to talk about that and really think, all right, like, this is why the interest in college basketball is, I don't want to say declining, but a little less than it used to be, because we're not having guys that we know are going to play in the NBA and guys that we're going to be interested in go to college. And I'm not saying I totally disagree with that statement, but Jalen Green going to play in the G League is not the reason why, at least from a true college basketball fan's perspective, the game is going to decline. Like, obviously, would college basketball rather have Jalen Green? Absolutely. Is Jalen Green announcing that he's going to be leaving for the G League a good day for college basketball? Absolutely not. So now you're wondering, Zach, why exactly are you bringing all this up? And the reason I'm bringing all this up is because Jalen Green leaving and not at all going to college doesn't kill college basketball. Most of the time, unless your name is Zion Williamson, it is very, very hard to go all the way and win and get to a Final Four as a freshman. Not even Zion Williamson could do it. Consistently, over the last couple years throughout college basketball, haven't you noticed that the teams that not only win the national championship, but also the teams that get to a Final Four are veteran-led? I think there's a reason why Duke hasn't won a national championship since 2015 and hasn't won an ACC title since 2010. And oh yeah, as much as we love Zion, and he is probably the best college basketball player I've seen since I started watching, like, there's no doubt about it. But he didn't win a national championship at Duke. As a matter of fact, he didn't even make a Final Four. As a matter of fact, he got knocked out by the team we were just talking about, Cassius Winston and the Michigan State Spartans. And why is that? Because they were veteran-led, they have experience, and I think everyone needs to know that just because you have a star freshman, even if you build around him with other star freshmen, that doesn't always necessarily mean that your team's going to be good and your team's going to be successful. Look at Anthony Edwards at Georgia last season. Even the really, really good freshmen like Onyeka Okongwu at USC, he was awesome, and USC was good, but they were like a bubble team. It is hard to lead your team consistently to win consistently and lead your team to the NCAA tournament when you're really the only good player on the team. And my point is, guys like Davide Moretti, and this is where this connects to Texas Tech. I'm not saying I blame Davide Moretti for leaving early. It's probably a great choice for him. He's going to go home. He's going to make some money. It makes all the sense in the world for him. But from when people say, oh, Jalen Green leaving is going to kill college basketball, it's decisions like this that I'm not going to say are going to kill college basketball, but that are going to hurt college basketball more than guys like Jalen Green leaving. And I think that's what the casual basketball fan, I'm not even going to say college basketball fan, but I feel like that's what your casual fan that, follows a little bit of college basketball, follows ESPN on all of their social media and sees the basic highlights. It's moves like Moretti leaving which kills college basketball even more, because as you guys saw in my preseason top 25, I had Texas Tech as the number 5 team in all of college basketball, and they're in the Big 12, which, hear me out, is probably going to be one of the 2 or 3 best conferences in all of college basketball next season. And when you look at Texas Tech and the way this decision by Davide Moretti really affects their team, once again, Texas Tech is a team filled with like a bunch of 6'6" to 6'8" wings, and I thought they were going to have Moretti as their starting point guard. They also have Kyler Edwards, a kid that right now would probably be their starting point guard. But when you think of Kyler Edwards, he's really known to be a guy that is a pure spot-up shooter. They have a really athletic forward in Terrence Shannon. Right now, the other option at point guard is Namari Burnett, the freshman. But once again, kind of similar to Kyler Edwards, I do think he's a little bit better off the ball. They also have Marco Santos Silva, the big man from VCU, transfer, very good player. Another kid I like that they have is Kevin McCullough, a kid that played a little bit last year and really came on for the Red Raiders towards the back end of last season. And the other reason why I'm a little nervous about this Davide Moretti move from the Texas Tech perspective is last year, Texas Tech was actually a little disappointing. And I love Chris Beard more than anyone. And I'm not blaming him. I'm not saying Texas Tech had a bad year. All I'm saying is, after Texas Tech in 2019, right, after they went to that national championship game, I kind of had the opinion that, all right, as long as you give Chris Beard, just a little bit of talent, he's an unreal coach and he'll get the job done. And last year was tough for Texas Tech. I think they were a very young team. They had trouble adjusting to life without Jarrett Culver, and that makes sense. Jarrett Culver is an NBA player. He's really good. He was a top 5 pick for a reason, and he is a guy, and he's a kid that went to a place in Texas Tech that historically doesn't really have that many top 5 NBA picks. So I think guys like Moretti and guys like Edwards and other guys, maybe TJ Holyfield as well, they struggled a little bit because Texas Tech was very young and they didn't have any depth. And the main reason why, or one of the main reasons why I should say, that I was very high on Texas Tech when I did my preseason top 25 was because of the combination of experience and talent. Texas Tech was supposed to be bringing back not only 2 guards that played and had a big-time role on that team that went to the national championship 2 years ago in Davide Moretti and Kyler Edwards, but I thought they'd also be bringing back, they are going to be bringing back Terrence Shannon, Kevin McCullough, along with freshman Namari Burnett and Micah Peavy that are both really good and talented. Also, Joel Notabwe, the transfer from UNLV, who most people in Lubbock absolutely love. So once again, that was the main reason why I was very high on Texas Tech, was because they had the proper combination of talent and experience. However, without Davide Moretti and now without a starting point guard, I'm going to have to move them down a little bit, especially in the top Big 12. In my preseason top 25, I was having a little bit of trouble ranking the teams in the Big 12 after Baylor. I love the Bears. I think they should be, especially without Moretti now, the consensus preseason pick to win the Big 12. Another team I'm very high on in the Big 12 this year is West Virginia. I understand they didn't finish last season great, but I love the way their roster is built with Shibwe, Culver, Miles McBride, and all the experience they have. And of course, you can never count out Kansas. Personally, I'm not as high on them as most, but they're still in the mix, obviously, when you've won that many Big 12 championships throughout the history of your program, and Bill Self is still your coach. But it's going to be interesting to see what exactly Texas Tech does, because Chris Beard also was dealing with a problem recently that he was over the scholarship limit. Before Moretti left, they were at 15, which is 2 over. So now without Moretti, they're going to be only 1 over. But the other interesting thing about Texas Tech is they're in Mac McClung's final seven. And if you don't know Mac McClung, we're actually going to be talking about him a little bit next segment in the transfer portion of today's show. During the college basketball offseason, transfers, I feel like, are always, a big integral part that we should be going over. But Texas Tech is listed in Mac McClung's top seven. And once again, he's going to be announcing his final college decision later this afternoon. And Texas Tech is in that top seven. And people have said that if they were going to predict, all the crystal balls out there are saying that Mac McClung is going to go to Texas Tech. And I've also heard that one of the big reasons why Mac McClung actually decided to leave Georgetown was because he wanted to play a little bit of point guard. And on paper, that sounds great. Zach, you have a big-time player in Mac McClung. I mean, if he comes back and if he's playing college basketball next season, odds are that means he's going to be a waiver and going to be eligible, because I can't really see him sitting out or waiting another 2 years in order to play in the NBA. So on paper, you're like, all right, Zach, like Mac McClung, that's a great move. But at the same time, he's not a point guard. He's better and he's at his best when he's the top scoring option. And I'm not saying if you're Chris Beard and if you're Texas Tech not to take him, but I think he's kind of a better version of Kyler Edwards. And you need that pure pass-first point guard. And for me, I don't think Mac McClung's that guy. I also understand it's kind of late in the transfer period, and there aren't really that many true point guards that you could just get at this time. But that's why I think Moretti leaving, especially this late in the offseason, was such an impactful move for Texas Tech. You guys know how important the point guard position is in the context of college basketball. If you don't have a starting point guard, it's very hard to win games. There have been many teams that have experienced that problem over the last couple of years. And Moretti, was a guy that was with this program for 3 years, he was a really good player. And I'm just going to be very fascinated to see how exactly Chris Beard and the rest of his staff at Texas Tech really deal with this. Right now, I moved down to Tech to number 11 in my preseason top 25. So I guess that's a challenge for Chris Beard, and we'll see how he handles it without his starting point guard.